Geratophobia is the illogical, unreasonable fear of old people and of getting old. And we have an epidemic of it.
Maggie Kuhn, co-founder of the Grey Panthers and one of the great leaders and spokespersons of our time, is making a unique contribution to American society. She is challenging age-related prejudice and generating national support for the needs inherent in the aging process, from the United States Senate to the American Medical Association. With her extraordinary energy and insight, Maggie Kuhn portrays the admirable spirit, commitment, and new image of aging in America.
Our focus is not on old folks' issues. We're not a gray lobby. We're not working for the special interests of old people. We're working for the special interests of people. Humanizing, hopefully, and healing our society of its divisions.
Okay. Thank you for that, Emily. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon to all of you. Good evening to some. Hello, friends, neighbors, and supporters of the Grey Panthers. As you know, I'm Michelle Arnaud. I'm leading the New York chapter. And on behalf of our board, I thank you for your support of the Grey Panthers movement, which was founded in Philadelphia in 1970 by Maggie Kuhn, whom we just saw in that brief video. Maggie famously reminded us to speak up, although our voices may shake. So let's do our best, especially under current circumstances, to raise our collective voices and advocate on behalf of older adults. So this is our Transformation Tuesday series, which we host on the final Tuesday of the month since 2021. Our mission, as stated by Maggie, is to combat ageism and age discrimination and to promote intergenerational contact, which is the intention of our series and especially of today's program, Hot Topics from Emerging Professionals in Aging Services, which we are presenting in partnership with EmergingAging, a networking group of young professionals. So today's program captures our mission to a T. A few months ago, we received a request from EmergingAging. I don't know if it was Allison Cook or Alana Kiefer, who asked if Grey Panthers could include an hour to talk about their organization and let people know about opportunities in the aging field. Although by 2034, older adults will outnumber children for the first time in U.S. history, gerontology remains underrepresented in academic programs and the workforce. There's a shortage of geriatricians as well as professionals with specialized trainings. So we're thrilled to host this hour of Hot Topics. We hope our programs provide a friendly space to change the narrative for how ageism impacts our daily life, with the goal of making a positive difference. And we'd be happy to take your suggestions for future webinars. Remember, all our webinars are recorded and available free on our website, gpnyc.org, posted by Emily Trask, our Communications and Digital Engagement Manager. So please feel free to go on our website and listen to any of our past webinars. Today, we're going to hear from 3 members of EmergingAging Network, which sorry, I just lost my place here, which is part of NIAM, the New York Academy of Medicine, which unites emerging talent and seasoned professionals in the aging field. So our 3 presenters are Allison Cook, Jennifer Reeder, and Danielle Goldberg. So a little bit about their backgrounds. Allison, who's one of the leaders of EmergingAging, is the founder of Better Aging and Policy Consulting. She's dedicated her career to improving the lives of older adults and the people who care for them. Her experience spans widely, from providing care and helping people navigate health coverage to implementing policies that improve the care system and advising age tech startups. She received her bachelor's and master of public health from Brown University. Jennifer Reeder of the Alzheimer's Foundation of America's of America is the Director of Educational and Social Services. She oversees the educational programming for dementia care professionals and care partners, the AFA helpline. There's so much that these people do, and in-person therapeutic and community classes. She's dedicated to ensuring that those affected by Alzheimer's receive support and educational resources that they need when faced with extreme challenges. And then our final speaker will be Danielle Goldberg, a recent graduate of the Columbia School of Social Work, who now works at a NORC, a naturally occurring retirement community in Washington Heights. She is the program manager. Building on her experience at Meals on Wheels in San Francisco, she's excited to be in a role that fosters community and supports aging in place. So now it's my pleasure to hand the virtual mic to Allison Cook, who returns to our series after a gap of a few years. Welcome back, Allison.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'll just briefly share a couple of things about emerging aging. As Michelle shared, we are a networking group for emerging professionals in the field of aging. I would just clarify, emerging just means that someone is newer to the field. There's no age limit on what that might be. And we welcome professionals of all experience levels to our events. Our mission is to support emerging professionals, but that necessarily requires them to connect with more established professionals in the field. So we have members of all experience levels. If you want to learn more about us, I just put our website in the chat. We have a membership fee of $30 per year, so it's very modest, really made to be affordable for most emerging professionals. And we hold events throughout the year with a variety of partners, and we're very, very happy to be here with Gray Panthers today. If you have any questions about emerging aging, you can feel free to reach out to me, or you can email, and I'm going to put an email in the chat, emergingaging@niam.org. I did forget to mention, Michelle mentioned it, Emerging Aging is a program under the New York Academy of Medicine's Center for Healthy Aging. And so we really love being able to tap into the New York Academy of Medicine's network as well. With that, I want to get us started. I want to spend most of the time hearing from our panelists about emerging topics, emerging topics in the field. We are going to start with Jennifer Reeder, and she's going to be sharing a little bit about trauma-informed care. I do want to just say, please put any questions you might have in the chat. We're going to wait until the end to do a Q&A, but I don't want you to forget them. So put them in the chat and we will try to get to as many as we can at the end. So Jennifer, I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you so much. Can everybody see my screen? I think so, yeah. Okay, great. So thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to provide this very brief presentation to you all. So this comes from a course that's actually about 2 hours long. So there's so much more that I would like to share, and you can always reach out, and I would love to share that with you. So while I have this screen on top about AFA's mission, which is to provide support, services, and education to individuals, families, and caregivers affected by Alzheimer's disease and dementia and related dementias nationwide, and fund research for better treatment and a cure, I'd like to share just a little bit about my journey and how I got here to AFA and what trauma-informed care means to me. So before starting here at AFA, I worked as a family-based therapist for close to 10 years, and that was in the Philadelphia area. And then I came to New York and I became a director for preventive services. So I was supporting the families pretty much in ongoing crisis, meaning that the children in the homes were at risk of being taken out of the homes. And I learned a lot. I learned so much from the families that I supported. And I learned so much about how the systems involved in their lives, school systems, juvenile justice, child welfare, their environment, deeply, deeply affected their overall well-being. And what I found to be so incredibly true was that those who experienced trauma, and for some who are experiencing ongoing trauma, deserved to be treated, very much deserved to be treated with greater understanding and patience, much of which the systems involved in their lives were doing nothing of the sort at all. And so when I started here at AFA, the very first course, the continuing education course that I developed was called Can Psychological Trauma Increase the Risk of Dementia? I just felt that it was really important for professionals to understand the bidirectional relationship between PTSD and dementia. So on one side, how PTSD, chronic stress, can affect brain health, leading to an increased risk of dementia. But then also for those who have dementia, especially Alzheimer's disease, for those who have the disease and have experienced trauma at some point in their lives, can have a reemergence of traumatic memories because their coping mechanisms, their coping skills are deteriorating along with parts of their brain. And so this is so important to understand, and why trauma-informed care is really imperative, really needs to be a universal approach in dementia care. And even for somebody who hasn't experienced trauma, living with Alzheimer's disease in of itself is a traumatic experience. And so people with Alzheimer's disease, just the same, deserve greater understanding and greater patience. So I'll share some with you a little bit more about traumatic memories. So the individuals who are able to manage the effects of a traumatic event are unable to do so after physical and cognitive health declines. Traumatic memories can be full of vivid multisensory detail, but are often fragmented as well. And so this is a combination that can be especially frightening for those whose capacity for reactional reflection and self-awareness has been compromised by dementia. So this can create intense, instantaneous fight, flight, or freeze responses to stimuli that's associated with the trauma. And these triggers are largely unconscious, and the brain responds to them as though the original traumatic event is taking place in the here and now, not something that is connected to the past. And their reactions to this re-traumatization can be easily misinterpreted, resulting in restraints or unnecessary medication. I mean, how many older adults do we know who have Alzheimer's disease show agitation and aggression and are quickly prescribed an antipsychotic medication, which can be very dangerous for individuals who have a dementia-related illness? So, that's why we really need to be looking at providing safety, comfort, and support, and avoid re-traumatization. So, it is imperative to assist an individual living with dementia and feeling safe and secure, because the very nature of the illness can lead to feelings of disorientation, fear, insecurity, and uncertainty. So trauma-informed care. The goal is not to disclose any or all details of the traumatic experience, but rather to help the person feel safe, develop trust, and ultimately become more functional. Trauma-informed care considers the complexities of trauma and helps to promote a supportive environment of healing and recovery, rather than environments and approaches that can re-traumatize the person. So it involves paying attention to a person's choices during their processes or procedures that may be triggering for the individual. And these steps are used at any time that a caregiver is touching the individual. And it develops trustworthy and collaborative care environment that is open, nurturing, safe, and ultimately helps the person to be able to better function. And this is why it really needs to be used as a universal precaution or universal approach. Research shows that 55 to 90% of people have experienced at least one traumatic event. And something else that I think is important too is that it helps to reframe challenging behaviors as coping strategies designed to help the person survive. So we're not just putting a label on the person's behavior as agitation and aggression, but the person is in fight, flight, or freeze mode because in their mind, they are experiencing that trauma in the here and now. And so that's what, and taking, I think that empowering, taking that strength-based approach that the person is trying to survive, not that it is a problematic behavior in any type of way. And so just to kind of take the steps with trauma-informed care, I want you to think about Mr. Walters. So Mr. Walters has lived in the Pines Nursing Home of Raleigh, North Carolina for almost 1 year. His Alzheimer's disease has significantly progressed over the past 2 years, now requiring 24 hours of care. Mr. Walters is unable to communicate his needs, so it is the responsibility of the nursing home staff to learn about Mr. Walters and how to support him when in distress. Mr. Walters has been very quiet and subdued since his arrival, yet over the past month, he shows signs of sundowning, agitation, resistance to staff, and sometimes aggressive behaviors during personal care tasks, especially bathing. Now, during these episodes, Mr. Walters will sometimes yell loudly about an infantry and being under fire. The staff were perplexed since these behaviors and resistance seemed to come out of nowhere, so they started doing some investigation, and here's what they discovered. So they found out from his adult children that he was in the Korean War, and he almost drowned while under fire crossing a freezing cold river. He fell recently, and something that's important to note too when we think about trauma and reemergence of traumatic memories is sometimes that can be triggered when somebody has injured themselves. So that feeling of pain, that experience of pain can then trigger emotional pain, which are those traumatic memories. He's on a pain relieving medication and then also recently snowed, which does not occur very often in that area of North Carolina. And so when staff encourage the residents to look out the window and enjoy, Mr. Walters refuses. So this is what could be possibly triggering those traumatic memories, the pain as well as the snow. And so the recommendations on how to provide trauma-informed care for Mr. Walters. So the goal, the ultimate goal is to build trust and promote a supportive environment of healing and recovery. And the only way you can do that is by first building a therapeutic relationship. That is key, to build a therapeutic relationship. And we want to create opportunities for Mr. Walters to feel that he has a sense of purpose in his community. We always want to first introduce who we are and why we are there. Before we touch Mr. Walters, we want to explain the task that we would like to do together. We want to use simple language. We want to avoid lengthy explanations. We want to explain our role and Mr. Walters' role in completing tasks together. We always want to complete tasks together. We don't ever want to do a task to someone. We don't want to do something to a person. We want to do those tasks together. We want to create that safe and comfortable environment. So playing his preferred choice of music, that's really important. It can't just be any type of music. It's got to be his preferred choice. We want the temperature of the room. We want to consider that because if it's the cold water, if it's the cold weather that's triggering the traumatic memories, we want to turn the heat way up in his room so he doesn't feel any sense of cold. We wanted to think about the temperature of the water and give him an opportunity to feel the temperature of the water before placing it on his body. We want to think about soft lighting. We want to think about privacy as well. That's really important. How often do we go to long-term care settings and people are getting undressed by the people who work there with the door wide open? We want to always, always respect people's privacy. And when engaging in the task, we want to first explain each step and then check in with Mr. Walters during and after each step. If he appears uncomfortable or he is in distress, we want to ease off that task, give him a moment. And then if we can only achieve one part of the task, that is okay. Because what's most important is that we're building that therapeutic relationship. And so this is what trauma-informed care is all about. And I'll just kind of go back to the slide here, right? So being patient and present, creating a sense of safety, ensuring choice and control of one's own care. Personal care tasks are completed together. clarity, consistency, and respective boundaries. We want to foster an atmosphere that validates and affirms, and so like if we're saying, okay, so a task you could do together is, for instance, saying like, okay, Mr. Walters, so now we're going to be taking off your shirt. So what you could do is to raise your arm and I will take the sleeve off. Thank you so much. So anytime that he is participating in the task, we want to validate, we want to affirm that he's helping in that moment. And especially to creating a sense of purpose and community. That's something that I always add personally to trauma-informed care, because for anyone to feel wherever they are that it's home, they have to feel that they're contributing to their community, and that they also have that sense of purpose in their lives. So, to learn more about trauma-informed care, you can check out our courses that we have developed here. What used to be, can psychological trauma increase the risk of dementia? The course I mentioned that I developed first and foremost when I got here is now called PTSD and Dementia, an exploration of brain health and trauma. And then we also have trauma-informed care for persons living with dementia, a universal approach. So PTSD and dementia, that really gets into the bidirectional relationship, where trauma-informed care really gets into case vignettes, case scenarios, and helping professionals work through how to utilize trauma-informed care. So often I get the question of like, well, if my organization doesn't adopt this approach, how can I use it? You can always use components of trauma-informed care in the daily support that you provide. And then the Jewish Federations of North America, they have an amazing trauma-informed care training as well, through their Center on Aging, Trauma, and Holocaust Survivor Care. So yeah, and then these are just AFA's resources and support. So if anybody wants to reach out to me at any time, you can always do that. And you can always reach out to our helpline. That's what I'll highlight in this moment, that's staffed by all licensed social workers who are thoroughly trained in dementia care. And that's it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciated that concrete story that helped me understand what it means to provide trauma-informed care.
Yeah.
I want to remind folks to put any questions they may have in the chat, and we will get to them at the end. And with that, I think we will move on to Danielle's presentation about naturally occurring retirement communities.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. So great to be here. And thank you so much to EmergingAging and Gray Panthers for hosting. It's an honor to be on this panel. So I'm going to start by sharing a little bit about myself. Actually, next slide. Perfect. Yeah, so a little bit about myself and my career journey. So in high school, I had the opportunity to volunteer at a local nursing home in the suburbs of Los Angeles. And there I'd call out bingo numbers, converse with the residents, some who appeared to have very few socializations throughout the day. And personally, I loved hearing their stories. I also appreciated those intergenerational friendships. That experience, as well as the very close bond I shared with my grandma, has led me to the passion of working with the aging population. During my junior year of high school, I actually lived in Shanghai, and through an after-school program, I would visit the local nursing home. Although at that time I did not speak Mandarin, I remember those shared connections through gestures and smiles, and that experience, as well as living in China later on, exposed me to how older adults can be integrated and respected in society, which has shaped my vision for the aging and community. I feel a strong pull to reduce isolation and ensure that older adults are included and valued in our communities. After those few years of living in China, I moved to San Francisco and became involved with Meals on Wheels, which probably many of you are familiar with. I volunteered for a couple years and then joined their social work team doing client assessments. Actually started a week before COVID. And of course, that time services were especially crucial for homebound seniors. With all that isolation, I really saw the need to improve these systems. And with a desire to grow in this field, I moved to New York. Last year, I graduated at the Columbia School of Social Work. And right now, I work as a NORC program manager. Next slide, please. Okay, so a NORC is a naturally occurring retirement community. You might ask, what exactly does that mean? So imagine you've been living in this building, an apartment, a home, been there for 40, 50 years, raised your family, built relationship with your neighbors, and over time, your neighbors are also aging. But instead of having to move into a retirement community or a nursing home, services are brought directly to you, where you are already living through a NORC program. So I'll go more into the structure and funding of these programs in later slides, but first want to talk about the history of a NORC. So in the late 1980s, the New York Department for the Aging saw a need for seniors living in dense housing, like high-rise apartment buildings, for more care, including social and health services to stay independent. And in 1986, the first NORC SSP, so it stands for Supportive Service Program, began at the Penn South Houses, which is a co-op housing development in Manhattan. So now, almost 40 years later, there are over 60 NORCs in New York City. The city contracts providers for 36 NORCs. That's through Department of Aging, and then New York State Office for the Aging has an additional 31 NORCs. And next slide, please. Okay, so there's different structures, models of NORC. One is called a classic NORC. So that's like a big apartment building, high rise, and then there's what's called a neighborhood NORC, and that is a cluster of buildings. So it would be buildings that are lower than 6 stories high or single homes. And actually, next slide. Great. Okay, so on this side, we're going to look at 2 different structures of the NORCs. So on the left-hand side, you'll see a neighborhood NORC in Washington Heights. And this particular one, so founded in 2006. And this is funded through New York Aging, as well as New York State Office of the Aging. And also there's a sponsoring agency through funding. And so the team consists of like a full-time client service manager, 2 part-time nurses, 1 program assistant, and a full-time program manager. And then on the right-hand side, this is a classic NORC. This one in Washington Heights started in 2017, and funding is through discretionary funds. And this includes part-time social worker, a part-time nurse, and a program manager. So if we look at these 2 different programs, for the neighborhood NORC, we're working with the NORC is working with maybe housing management, but very different in a neighborhood NORC, because these are private management companies who perhaps oftentimes, because of gentrification, don't necessarily want older adults to age in place there. So there are challenges maybe working in partnership with these housing management. But and then in a classic NORC, we're often working with the building management. And this also seeing NORC members throughout the day if you work there. So we're actually seeing where they live. And so with that, I could see different needs, could see maybe someone's not doing well one day, whereas a neighborhood NORC, they are coming to a community center and really rely on neighbors to maybe let the NORC know if a neighbor is not doing well, needs particular services. Next slide, please. Okay. So services offered, this is for both neighborhood as well as a classic NORC. So the social services is assistance with benefits, entitlements, health insurance. Members might need assistance with letter translation, perhaps if primary language is not English. And then also helping refer clients to legal services, elder abuse justice programs, and mental health providers. Also with the nurse on staff, the nurse will help with blood pressure monitoring, some collaboration with doctors, and also education. And then in a NORC of activities, so it could be exercise classes, dancing, chair yoga, there's a walking group, and a big part also is partnerships. So partnering and having, for example, a nutrition specialist come and talk to NORC members, as well as a program through Henry Settlement, friendly visiting. So we partner with many programs. Next slide, please. Okay, so touch base a little bit on funding and partnerships. So there's multiple funding sources, and there's a nonprofit that will be one of the funders, as well as Department of Aging. City Council also will sometimes provide discretionary funds. And then next slide, please. Okay, so how the NORC models support aging in place. So more older adults are able to remain safely in their homes, helps reduce social isolation, improve health and wellness outcomes, build stronger communities, and also looking at Department of Aging from just 4 months, so that there's 36 NORCs, and they served over 12,577 older adults. And then next slide, please. Great, okay, so this slide, I invite you to watch a video that was actually just created 2 weeks ago through New York State Department of Aging. I'm just gonna watch like a 4-minute clip. Thanks, Emily.
So what does the future hold for NORCs? We are hoping for some, pretty substantial growth because we know it works. It's been around for 30 years. The NORC model is absolutely a New York first idea. It's a model that is way ahead of its time.
I haven't seen you in a long time. I know.
We are just talking now as a society about how to bring together social and other community services with healthcare services and monitoring in order to serve people holistically.
Hi, Joe. Hi. How are you? Hi, how you doing? Hey, Millie, how are you? Oh, okay.
It's cost effective. If you look at New York State, the average cost of a nursing home can be annually around $160,000 a year, a little more in some counties, a little less. But when you look at being able to provide access to these services for under $500 a year per participant, it's a no-brainer.
Hey, I have a present for you. Oh, thank you. Come on in.
What we have proven over and over again is many people do not need to go into a nursing home. So if we have 100,000 licensed nursing home beds in New York, which we do, but we have 4.84 million people over the age of 60. So where is the game? The game is in the community. That's what we do.
There are so many residents who just need help in the home.
They don't have to be in fear of having to end up in a nursing home or a retirement home. They have their independence, and they also have a sense that if something happens, there is somebody to help me.
5, 6, 7, 8.
As a busy working daughter who doesn't live near my dad, I'm just so grateful for NORC and them being in his life.
I'm happy when I get up in the morning. I know there's always something to do. They provide every service that you could ever dream of.
So please let us know if we can use the Bernese Mountain Dog as therapy dogs for anybody in our community that could use them.
The NORCs don't serve any particular group, they serve it all, right? From those who are healthy and active to those who are at risk, and everybody in between. And it's a model that works, it's not that expensive, and it kind of checks all the boxes in terms of what's important to government, to families, to individuals and community.
My hope for the NORC program is to see not only a NORC program in every community in New York State, but to really spread across the United States. And we're seeing that.
Making people's lives easier, more fulfilling, both for the people we serve and the people we've hired. It's a great feeling.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to share that video in the chat because it's a little long, but great to watch.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so please, I see people are putting questions in the chat. Please continue to do so. I'm going to briefly present on a third topic, and then we'll get to questions and discussion. So let me share my screen. So I'm going to talk about how we pay, how we can build new ways to pay for long-term care. But before I do, I will share a little bit about how I got into this work. So I started off, I guess my formal career in aging started while I was in college, and I worked as a home health aide. From there, I got my master's in public health with a focus on aging, and I worked in the nonprofit sector for a while. I was at the Medicare Rights Center, educating and counseling people on their benefits, as well as doing some policy work. And then I was at an organization called PHI that focuses on the direct care workforce. So home health aides, personal care aides, certified nursing assistants, and similar occupations. And I was looking at what policies could support those workers, both in New York and nationally. And when I got laid off during the pandemic, I talked to my full network, many of which I met through EmergingAging, and decided to take off on my own and do consulting. So the through line of my work is really, how do you build that system? How do you put the policies in place that support older adults and the people who care for them? So you'll hear one of the topics that I focus on in my presentation today. So again, how do we build a new way to pay for long-term care? I'm going to not focus on this too much. A lot of us are well aware that our system, and just, I apologize, there are some acronyms on the slide. LTSS, long-term services and supports. Another way, a more comprehensive way to talk about long-term care. I will try to avoid using acronyms when I speak, but I cannot guarantee it. So we know that long-term care is unaffordable. If you were listening to the video, you heard how much on average a nursing home costs, and that was actually a couple years ago. Does anyone, you can put it in the chat if you know, if someone needed 40 hours a week of home care in New York, do you know on average how much that would cost? If you know, put it in the chat. I'm going to give you a second. Oops. I can't even see the chat. That's what I was trying to get to. Here we go. Let's see. How much would it cost per year in total? Guess a number. Put in any number. I'll give you one more second and then I'm going to give you the answer. Okay, there we go. We got some numbers coming in. For 1 year, only 40 hours per week. So basically, if someone is getting care while the family caregiver is working, on average, that would cost $70,000 for the year. That is unaffordable for the vast majority of Americans, and really just unrealistic for many of us to afford. And that's why we rely on family caregivers to do so much work, and that negatively impacts them, their ability to work, their ability to financially support themselves. It also means that we undervalue the workers in our system. They're paid very little, and often have to rely on public benefits to make ends meet. And we really rely on Medicaid because we have, by default, we haven't intentionally built a system. So how can we pay for care? I'll just briefly walk through private long-term care insurance. This is something we have in the US. Some people may have it, but not many. It hasn't been incredibly successful because premiums have been pretty expensive. I'll just share my adopted grandmother. She purchased a long-term care insurance policy when she was in her 50s, and it cost $800 per year. She's in her late 80s now, and she just got a notice that if she wants to keep that same policy, she's going to have to pay $50,000 per year, which is just not feasible. And she thought she planned ahead. She thought she had a whole plan in place so that she could age in her home. But the private insurance market really just hasn't met that need. Safety net. This is Medicaid in the US, and a vital program. People qualify generally when they fall below a certain income and/or asset level, and that can create challenges for people who fall just above that limit. Then I'm going to skip the third one. I'll come back to it. Universal coverage. We don't have that in the US. There's a couple of other countries that really provide all the long-term care coverage that their residents may need. Generally funded through, taxes and other general revenues. It is an expensive way to provide for care, and so that's why it's not incredibly common. But social insurance, this is the one where experts point to as a way that could work in the US, either on a state level or a federal level or both. This is where people contribute, usually through a payroll tax, towards a government-run program. Basically, the government runs its own long-term care insurance program. You pay in through the payroll tax, and once you qualify, once you need the benefits, you get them. So a number of states have been exploring this model. There's one state that has actually implemented this model and will start paying out benefits next year, and that is, let's see. I'm going to ask a question. Does anyone know what state that is? It's a multiple choice since you see the states that are listed here. Anyone else have a guess? I see. Okay. Well, the first guess was the correct one. Washington State. Washington State has created a program. People are paying in right now. They've been paying in for a few years now through a payroll tax. And as of next year, when people need that benefit, they can access a $36,000 benefit. It is not going to cover everything that everyone needs, but for most people, they don't have any savings they can tap into to cover their long-term care. So in Washington State, this is a good starting point and will really make a difference in many people's lives. It can be used for home modifications. It could be used to pay a family caregiver. It could be used to hire a home care worker. It could be used for a nursing home or assisted living, but that money would probably go pretty quickly in an institutional setting. So it's very exciting. Everyone's been keeping a close eye on how things are going in Washington and already learning some lessons. We have a number of other states that are considering it, exploring this model in some way. And I will say this slide is slightly outdated because there's one extra state that needs to be in there, and that's Vermont. So what I'm going to do next is just speak briefly, because I want to leave time for questions. Where is New York in this? Many of us, but not all of us on this webinar are in New York. And I thought I would give a little bit of a deeper dive. So we have our own bill that has been introduced in the state legislature, modeled off the Washington State program. It's called the Long-Term Care Trust. And you can see here in the state Senate, it's Bill 1179. In the Assembly, it's 1499. It was introduced by Senator Shelley Mayer and Assemblymember Dr. Anna Kellis. So what we need is to look at, so the New York bill right now proposes to double what the Washington state benefit is. We need to see, based on New York's tax base, what would the payroll tax be for that level of benefit? And really kind of see if we're covering everyone over the age of 18 versus only people over the age of 50, what would the cost be? All of those kind of technical questions that will allow us to get over the finish line. And we're trying to get funding both through the legislature and through foundations, so a private-public partnership. If anyone has any ideas, you could send them my way about folks we should talk to get some funding for this. I think this program will be incredibly helpful for New Yorkers and really help everyone that falls between qualifying for Medicaid and is very wealthy. So you can learn some more about what I just spoke about. I went kind of fast because I want to have time for questions. I'm going to put in the chat, oops. Let's see if I can get back to here we go. I will put in the chat here, transformlongtermcare.com. This is a website that I helped to build with MIT Collab. It goes over much of what I spoke about in my presentation today. Some of the basics about why we need to think about how we pay for long-term care, why social insurance is the model that many have landed on, more details about all those states on that slide that I shared, worker-owned co-ops, and there is a great resource section. I'm a little biased because I put it together and many of my reports are there. But it has, for those of us who are like me, who want to dive into all those details, there's lots of reports that you can, and articles and webinars that you can look through. And I also wanted to give you guys a little bit of homework. If you're from New York, call your state legislators, ask them to support or thank them for supporting this bill, the Long-Term Care Act. If you're from elsewhere, call your own state legislators and urge them to create a program like this. We really need an option to help people pay for the care they need. And at the moment, the federal government isn't taking action. So it's up to the states to make the moves on this. And then I want to say, no matter where you're from, call your federal representatives and urge them to protect Medicaid. We need both the safety net and a planful system to cover everyone else. And there are federal proposals that would really gut what Medicaid provides. And unfortunately, that means that older adults, especially people receiving home care, would be impacted. And with that, I have my contact information here. I'll leave it up for a moment before I stop sharing and we'll take some questions. Okay. All right. So let's see. Michelle, have you been keeping track of the questions, or
Yeah,
Emily?
well, I just had a question myself. So how can rising professionals find opportunities in the hot topics that you three covered today, which would be dementia care, NORC programming, and long-term care support? Can you advise or guide?
I will say one thing, which is a little bit of a plug. Emerging Aging does share job opening in that our network sends to us. We share it with our members. I will say what I've found incredibly helpful is reaching out to people who are currently working in that field and connecting with them, getting their advice about how to enter it, and asking them to share any openings when they come across their desk. I don't know if Jennifer and Danielle have anything else to add.
Well, Danielle, I also would like to know a little more about your position. What are your responsibilities? What does a program director do in a NORC?
Yeah, thanks for your question, Michelle. Yeah, so as a program manager, so there's working with the budget and then creating the calendars, right, the activities for the month, whether that's through partnerships. I can mention like presentations. Let's say we have a presentation on nutrition. So get it on the calendar, and then also get to do the called a one call system, like a robocall, reminding group members of activities for that day. And also with the social work background, can also meet one-on-one with group members with any particular issues.
So you have direct contact with the residents.
Exactly, yeah. So it's, yeah, great job. Residents as well as city partnerships, budgets.
So you liaise, okay.
Yeah.
And actually someone on our board had a question for Jennifer. Ron said, you mentioned the need to make this a universal approach, I guess. The therapeutic approach, is
The
that
trauma-informed care.
Yeah. And he was asking, can this also apply to younger people experiencing mental health issues triggered by traumatic experiences? Are there any courses that use the approach across the spectrum of ages?
So all of our courses are geared toward dementia care. But definitely when it comes to trauma-informed care is an approach that any organization, that any system can incorporate and utilize. So that could be schools, that could be places of work, especially for people who do types of work that can be traumatic. I've worked in many schools where the environment in of itself was traumatic for the children. And so, I think it certainly is an approach that you can find in other areas than dementia care. So yes, absolutely. But for our courses are mainly focused on dementia care. And somebody else had also mentioned about talking about how person-centered trauma-informed care, meeting that cultural humility and self-awareness. That is so, so important, especially when you're providing trauma-focused therapy. Unfortunately, when it comes to trauma-informed care and dementia care, I just want to point out that so many people with Alzheimer's disease who have experienced trauma and maybe responding to traumatic memories, the people around them are unaware of the trauma because many times that's not a part of learning about a person's background, about a person's life history when they're in a care setting. And even sometimes families don't know about a person's traumatic past. So that's really important to always be self-aware when practicing that. It's just unfortunately for so many, it's the trauma that they have experienced is unaware. People are unaware of it.
Someone else had a question about are there foundational articles on the risks of prior trauma and association with elevated dementia risk? Jennifer.
Yes, there's quite a few articles out there, and there's a lot of research that's out there. I would say that research pretty much says that about 50 to 70% of people who have experienced PTSD people who have experienced PTSD are at a 50 to 70% higher risk of developing dementia later on in life, even childhood trauma. But that it always depends on what source you're looking at. So that's why literature reviews are so incredibly important when you're developing courses and when you're looking into different topics. So always do those literature reviews.
Well, and I would think anybody, when you're doing the trauma care, especially anybody that's had any brain injury, TBI, anything that falls through the brain, whether it is somebody like Ron asked about, with mental health issues, or even somebody like my son with the seizures and all that. Once the brain is compromised, I think there's a lot of trauma, and that just little things. And like you said, it's resident directed, person directed care that prevents the trigger.
Yeah, and traumatic brain injury, what's interesting with TBI is that's always been so connected to Alzheimer's disease, but they're seeing a greater connection to frontotemporal degeneration, just because when you think about where the frontal and temporal lobes are, much more closer to the rough interior surface of the skull. But yeah, absolutely, that's another risk factor, especially for veterans too, who've experienced PTSD and traumatic brain injury.
Another question for Danielle. Why is the NORC model not popular outside of New York?
I was wondering the same thing. I know I was doing a little research. There are NORCs outside of New York. Maybe they're called a different name, kind of a similar model. But yeah, I also wondering why aren't there so many more? And I'm looking at the second question for resources for starting. So to be a NORC, there needs to be like a nonprofit attached, as well as funding. So in terms of applying, I know for the classic NORC member residents there went to their district council and really advocated for it. So I'd say for starting, advocate, go to city council, and then hope that a nonprofit can also be the supporting agency. But yeah, hopefully.
I guess New York just has more, obviously tall buildings full of people who are aging in place. So probably makes more sense for New York.
Yeah, and I will add, there is something called the village model. This one started in Massachusetts, and it has it's more popular in more kind of suburban areas, but it has that same underlying mission of supporting people to age in place by providing some direct services, some activities and community and things like that. Those are typically, they may receive grants, and they also have a membership fee usually.
And a lot of all this goes back to even what we've been talking about multiple times over the last couple of years of the Einstein option. These are the type of things that we're trying to hopefully see developed around the country.
Do you want to explain more about the Einstein option?
So the Einstein option is a plan in play, a plan in motion is probably the best thing, because first of all, with everything going on with the federal government, we're having to kind of switch what we're looking at. But basically, it's 4 tiers of how do we improve this system. Resident directed care, for that, 2 priorities right now are resident directed care and priority of our staff. We need to build a workforce, and to build a workforce, you have to care for your workforce, and you need to train them. So, but Einstein is going to look at how do you do things like NORCs and give people options of, do they want to age in place? Let's get a program built around them, like what they have in Detroit that's called Show My Rivertown, that has assisted living and independent in the same building, plus has all the NORC services down on the main floor. And, and they have Meals on Wheels coming in and different programs. It's all about how are we going to build connected communities to be able to give people what they want, get a more intergenerational, and try to get so people do not have to go into nursing homes.
So I just I want to say I know we're at time. I know some people have to go. I want to respect people's time. I just see a quick question. NORC, naturally occurring retirement community, NORC. And so thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for sharing your questions. We hope that you learned a little bit today about these 3 different topics. We chose them because they are important topics in the field for people of all experience levels to know about. If you would like to learn more about emerging aging or join emerging aging, I'll just put the link in the chat one more time, and I will turn it back over to Gray Panthers to see if there's anything else they wanted to share.
Yeah, well, thank you, Emerging Aging, for introducing these 3 important topics and highlighting areas that desperately need support. So hopefully some of other people on this call will think about the opportunities. And next month on May 27th, we're going to meet again. We have another wonderful program with an author, Diane Hessen, who wrote a book called Our Common Ground. This was recommended by our wonderful follower, Gilbert Sabater. Thank you, Gilbert. So we're going to have, actually, it was our Meet the Author series. We are working it into our Transformation Tuesday series. This book is about how we can all work together as Americans, old and young. So we'll be sending out a little clip of the book and hope that everyone will return in May 27th at 2. So thanks, Allison, Danielle, and Jennifer, and everybody. And we'll see you in May.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.